Allow me to welcome our acclaimed, admired speaker of tonight, Mr. Shayak Sen. Shayak, as we call him in short, is a design executive with experience in building and leading design teams. He brings in a unique combination of corporate and entrepreneurial experience with multidisciplinary expertise in product innovation processes. Shayak has held various roles like head of design at Vedantu, previously Vice President Product Design at Misho, and also the AVP at Practo. A very warm welcome to you, Shayak. We are absolutely thrilled to have you here with us tonight. Handing over the session to you.
So, hi everybody. First of all, Merry Christmas to all of you. I know it's 8 o'clock, Christmas Eve coming. Uh, uh, Thanks for joining in us here. Hi, Pinkish. That's I see a new hairstyle. That's great. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I think thanks to COVID, we're transforming inside and out.
Okay, cool. I would have loved to have a little more banter, but since we are short of time here, I will, jump into the presentation right up front. Okay.
Yes, Shayak, it's
Yeah.
clear, and we can hear you loud and clear as well. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So I have a short around 15, 20 minutes time. So I will just move very fast on this. I had a lot of points to talk about, but let's see what we can cover here. So the first thing was when I actually started looking at this, when I was creating this presentation and I looked at the title, How to Land a High Paying Job in Design, my first thought was that it would be always best to start looking whether you're, like, let's say if you want to get a job in Google and Microsoft, start looking if you're related to somebody like Satya Nadella or Sundar Pichai. So those are like the shortcuts of life that you can perhaps somebody can attempt at. But we are not going to talk about that. We are going to talk about what are the what is a good way to kind of make sure that you and land a high paying job in design, right? And the real question to address this point should be broken down into two other questions, which is how to become a designer of value and what is the right job now for my career. Because if you take care of these two things, the pay scale or the salary will take care of itself, right? So I would be talking about these two, like how to become a designer of value, because it's absolutely important that whatever you're doing, that is valued in the industry, and if you are relevant and you can create impact and value. And in fact, right now in my career, I always evaluate design from the value that it's going to generate for the business, right? If you are able to demonstrate that, there will always be great salary packages, great positions and designations for you in the industry. And what is the right job now for my career? This is important because sometimes it's not about just a pay scale. Probably if you're starting off, you might a right job might not be paying you much, but it's good for the long run. Like they say, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So the idea is to have the right job, which is going to ensure that you are prepared for the long haul, right? So these are the two important things that we'll talk about today. Um, First, let's start with how to become a designer of value. And again, there's no single answer to this question, because different designers will have different strong points. They will have different skill sets. Somebody is very good at, let's say, visual. Sometimes somebody is very good at micro interaction. Somebody is very good at business abstractions, business skills. So there are different kind of skills that somebody can be good at. But what I'm going to talk about, and for every designer, again, there will be a different trajectory and journey, right? Because they have to also find themselves. Designers kind of explore and discover them while they are in their journey to in their career journey, right? So there is no straightforward answer, but what we are going to look at this whole thing is from these four frameworks or lenses. The first is the capabilities and competency mapped to industry needs. Like I said, that there are industry needs. Industry need, typically you have skills like you need a senior product designer, or a lead, or a design architect, or principal designer, or sometimes you have UX writers these days, visual designers. So there are different kind of needs, and what capabilities and competencies are extremely important to kind of match those need, right? And then second is career trajectory and company fitment. Again, everybody's career, typically there is a career trajectory, you don't start off by becoming a CEO of a company, right? You start somewhere, and again, you don't become a VP of design in the first just coming out of the college. You probably are going through a learning curve. So every designer is going to have a career trajectory, and then companies also have their own designations and requirements. So where exactly do you fit? At what stage of your career you are in, and how are you going to fit into that? What is the kind of fitment is right for you at this point of time, right? Then the third is expertise. Expertise is also important because relevance, to how to maintain relevance. Because if you are good in one or two very extremely strong, because there are multiple areas in design, and it's always great to build expertise in one or two areas so that you kind of stand out from the crowd. That's one more important part. And third, the fourth lens is about future, that how are you preparing yourself or making yourself future ready. A lot of things are changing over the time, and we also have to keep in mind that there will be new skills that you will have to acquire as you go forward, right? So jumping into the capabilities and competency map to the industry needs. Typically, when I look, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, but let's look at this. You typically have the basic design skills, okay, and then you have people skills, right? People skills are important as you keep growing up, because how are you navigating within the organization? How do you manage the stakeholders? What kind of communication conversation you have with the PMs? Or even with your peers and and people around you, is matters a lot. Third is experience. Experience is very important because having the right experience. Um, um, so again, this is something that you gain over the time. And somebody can be very good at B2C domain. Somebody can be very good at B2B, and they bring that experience. And I will tell you that why this experience kind of in a couple of slides later. I will explain that why these things matter and at what stage of hiring these things start mattering more, right? Then you have the reputation. I think as you grow even higher up, reputation becomes a very important piece. That how had you been in the other organization, what kind of impact you bring, how have you been with people, and I think those matters as well. And finally, like, have you been delivering value, right, to the business? So and each of these topics are large topics in themselves, so I'm not going to go deep into all of these, and they are separate discussions, of course. But just to give an idea that a design skills, like, you can have the fundamentals like design processes, design methodologies. These are something that you can actually learn from an institute, right? Information architecture, wireframing, visual design, problem breakdown. But there are things that you go up, like problem breakdown, design thinking, developing framework, abstractions, and creativity is something that you start growing over the time, right? There are also non-design skills like speed, communication, collaboration, context building, business acumen, professional maturity, adaptability, etc., which comes into picture as you start scaling your career. We will not be talking deeply about these things because these are, of course, also will be covered in IPL's courses separately. So, but just to give an idea about how these things matter is that I wanted to take you through the journey of hiring designers in one of the organizations where I was part of. So it's a growth stage company, startup. And this is how I went about hiring designers. The first thing that I was trying to hire for the company, and this will give you an idea about that what skill sets are being looked into when a design manager or an organization is trying to hire, right? So the thing is that the first thing that I wanted to hire were PDs and SPDs, the product designers and senior product designers, and only for bandwidth. Because imagine a growth stage startup and these are very contextual, because the growth stage startup will have a very different scenario than MNC, than early stage startup, than a mature startup. So absolutely different. But I'm giving one single instance to just give you example. So a growth stage startup is almost like a jet plane, fighter jet flying, right? So the first thing that you need is that you give the PDs and the product managers and the business people some bandwidth to kind of execute whatever is going on. You cannot stop a fighter jet because it has to keep flying, and you need to keep the engine running. So the first hiring that happens is the SPDs, and then the requirement is basically the essential skills. We are not looking for outliers. We're not looking for something which is like extraordinary great. And again, the salary commitment here is probably low, okay? Because the things that we're looking for is basic skills, speed, communication, ability to get context fast and execute. But immediately once those things are fulfilled, the next set of designers that I was trying to hire was lead and design managers. And there, what's the most important parameter was the experience and the basic fundamentals of design. Now, why was this very important? Because we were in the B2C domain, and we were looking for design managers who have already done this before. They would have been in different places before, like similar companies, and they would. And if you look at consumer internet businesses, B2C domain, there are a lot of things which are very standard. Like at least 60-70% is covered if you have been into multiple B2C domains right before. For example, the conversion funnel, you have engagement, you have onboarding, storefront, acquisition, you have subscription models, you have payment. So if somebody has already worked in these areas, they will know at least 70 or 80% of all those fundamentals will be covered, and they would know how to kind of approach the design. There's no learning about from 0 to 1 thinking. You can avoid a lot of 0 to 1 thinking, because what happens is that if you take a fresh designer at that stage, he will probably be doing a lot of 0 to 1 thinking and reinventing the wheel, which is a huge opportunity cost for the company itself. So that's the reason why you're looking for people who have experience. And at this stage, the organization is willing to pay a high salary, because it's extremely important to get these people and set the things right. And these are the people who know how to kind of change the engines of the jet plane, fighter jet, while the jet is flying, right? That's how they put it, right? And then after that, you need SPDs and PDs to help the design managers to execute. But during this time, it's not just execution, because now you are hiring for more. You're hiring like I would not want to hire somebody who is just bringing the basic skills. I would like to hire somebody who's an outlier, who has some expertise. Let's say somebody is extremely good at motion, knows about a design system, somebody who and because now, since the design managers and the PDs and SPDs before, they are taking care of the execution. I now know that even if I have somebody who is coming with an extremely good talent, but would need some time to build the context, we are fine, because we have that time for that guy, right? Previously, we wouldn't have that time. And similarly, going forward, you hire visual designers, because now you want to free up the UX designers from for more problem solving, and let the visual designers do the design and raise the final quality of the final output. Then you probably would need user researchers, because you need to support the lead designers and a big design team with insights, so that they have relevant conversation with product managers. And then UX writers to even improve the support, the right copy for design. So this is typically how I went about hiring designers in one of the organizations. And just to give an idea that at different scenarios and stages, you put more weightage to certain skills, and accordingly the value of the designer kind of increases, right? And the important part is that you have to understand that what the journey an organization is going through. So yeah, so going forward, talking about the career trajectory part, in this and the company fitment, and hence you have to understand the like in the last slide, like you understood that there is a certain priorities that organization has. So now you have to map your own career trajectory to the organization's trajectory and the fitment, right? And typically we talk about that, there are 3 lenses we're going to talk about: journey of a designer, design maturity model of an organization, and what to learn at different organizations, right? Going forward, yeah. So talking a bit about journey of a designer, this is partly a little bit of a thesis on my side. Okay, I have been I saw this pattern with a lot of designers, a lot of young designers at least. Okay, and I'll just quickly talk about this. Might be true or might not be true for many people today, but typically what happens is that a young designer starts with the phase 1, where you are learning the skills. And when you are learning the skills, probably you are using Sketch, Photoshop, or let's say you are making wireframes. You have 100 tools to this, and you are making the screens, and it's important because you have to learn those skills. And typically the amount of effort, let's say you put X effort, you get 2X results. And this is a part where you enjoy a lot, because this is the growth phase. Whatever you're doing, you are able to see that how you're improving, that the delta improvement is super high. So, and this lasts for almost 2-3 years. And this is the time when you are moving from a junior designer to a PD to an SPD level, right? Um, then typically in between, after this, there is a stage which comes, which is about where if you're putting X effort, you don't get 2X result. In fact, you get X by 2 result. Okay, because you have maxed out on your skill set based, improvements that is possible, and the whatever improvement is possible is probably not going to be 2X but X by 2. So this space looks pretty flat in terms of growth, and I've seen many of the designers also go through this mental thing that I'm not growing in my career because they are doing that. It looks like you're doing the same thing again and again, and this comes in the mid tier around 4 or 5 years, and then it kind of extends to 8 years. Depends upon different people, but and this time a lot of designers get disillusioned. Some of the think that should I move to product management, should I start open a coffee shop, should I become a movie maker or something like this. A lot of the designers think about leaving UX product design, right? But what I would say is that what is happening actually, if you look at it, is that you are doing the same thing again and again, no doubt, but also you are maturing inside, and that maturity is extremely important. For example, when you were in phase one, probably many of the designers are in their early, young ages, and they wouldn't have experienced life, for say. For example, they wouldn't have got married, would have children, they would not have got through medical conditions, a lot of things, right? In the phase two, you go through a lot of life events, and design is all about understanding the nuances of life, and you get those inputs from life itself, and you also are working in organizations, and you see that how can a product or a organization respond to these problems, right? And how you have to solve your ability to understand the problem in its entirety changes a lot. And then comes a phase three, because when you move through this and then when you have spent this time, suddenly if you are even making one single button, or you are the quantum of work doesn't matter, now the quality of work matters, because in the phase three you move to a problem centric view of the world. And the problem excites you more, the solution, because you have been in phase one, you can solve it. Execution is not the challenge anymore, it's all about understanding the problem and then solving it right. Now, this is typically the kind of, and you feel more joy about doing the same thing again, back again. And this cycle can keep repeating in a designer's life. So what's important is to understand that where do you lie right now and what you're doing, and find the right organization which is going to give you, which is right for which phase, right? So moving forward, and again, there's one design maturity model by InVision. I think I will request you guys to go and have a look at it. Download this very interesting PDF that the report that InVision has created. It talks about organizations. Some organizations are producers for they kind of took an interview of more than 2,000 designers, I think, and then some 500 companies or something like that, and then they created this framework where there are companies which they call as producers, then there are companies which they call as connectors, okay, and then architects, and then the level 4 was scientists, and level 5 visionaries, and the role the design plays is very different in each of these. And this is good to see that it's good to see that how design changes and how design evolves across these organizations. And also you should ask yourself that where you want to be and at what stage you are starting, which is the right starting point for you, right? um, Now, but just to give a little briefly outlining it. So the things that you learn at different companies, I'm talking about, I've laid out few companies, organizations here, and just wrote few points here. So one is like services company. Now, in the services company, you learn breadth, dealing with client, presentation skills, project management, and many other things. So these are some of the good things, because you can cover a lot of your fundamentals right here. It brings in a lot of discipline, which is also important. I have seen young designers getting into fresh out of college, going into product companies, and especially startups, okay, losing the sense of discipline that is required. So I would actually not suggest young designers fresh out of college, fresh grads, to go and join early stage startups, because that would, probably would not be the best decisions for them. Similarly, when you go to early stage startup, you learn more about business, problem solving, fast execution and results, 0 to 1 problem solving, participate in fundamentals, variety, being ability to work with the founders is a great opportunity for somebody who has kind of already been there and done the basics of design, and is want to get even more closer to business to understand how can you create impact. So some, like for somebody who is mid career to senior, right? Early stage startups can be really great. Growth stage startups, again, metric driven design, impact, learn the fundamentals of business, A/B test, research, cover different parts of business. Again, you get to see all of this in a growth stage startup. In mature startups, you're building systems and processes. Depth, because you get an opportunity now go into deeper. So in services early and growth, typically you are slightly more breadth than depth, but in mature startups you get the opportunity to go deeper, better business communication, stronger selling skills. Selling skills means within the organization, because now you have multiple stakeholders, and you build that skill of getting internal commitments. And again, management, right? In tech MNCs, again, depth is something that you definitely get. Documentation, process, methods, good practices, impact at scale, quality of conversation is very good, because I also believe that that's a very important point, because for young designers, it's very important to go to an organization where the product, because see, the design and the product are like married to each other in a way, right? They are together building a product. I don't see them as separate units. They are all going hand in hand, right? So if the product management function knows the right way to communicate and interact with designers, that's a very important point to kind of consider when joining an organization, because this will help to build the right set of design skills within a designer, right? So that's an extremely important point, I feel. In some of the early stage startups and growth stage startups, I do feel that, and some of where I have joined, my first job had been to get that language right? Because if you don't get that right, then designer doesn't get a fair field to play. So that's one important point. And then non-tech MNCs, again, domain expertise, stakeholder management, workflows, omni-channel experience are some things that you can definitely explore in a non-tech MNCs. And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but just to give an idea that where should you hinge yourself, right? Going forward, I will try to cover the expertise part. Like I said, that as you grow in your career, it's always good to build an expertise in one thing or a combination of couple of things which actually really works, right? Somebody can be really expert in visual design skills, front-end development, full stack designer. Somebody can be exploring, like a lot of designers go into motion design, macro interactions these days, design system, AI driven design. This is something that might evolve in the future. Product skills, metric skills, documentation, storytelling, sorry, this is more, business understanding, right? So these are some of the expertise that you can build. And I think even more newer things are coming every day. So it's important to keep an eye on what is shaping up and what are the new areas of expertise that is getting built, and upgrading yourself to it, right? And also seeing that what somebody is naturally inclined to. If I don't need to be necessarily expert in visual design skills if I'm not a visual design person specifically, but maybe I'm an extremely good design system or AI driven design enthusiast, and I can actually add more value there. Similarly, coming to future, the future part was where, like in machine learning, these are some of the new areas which is opening up, again, not exhaustive, but machine learning and AI driven design systems, self-evolving flows, business driven design, right? AR, VR, 3D interfaces, brain computer interfaces, and some things those are coming up. We should be aware that what's going to take the center stage going forward in the coming decade, like, coming 3-4 years or 5 years down the line, right? Um, and lastly, like the second question which we discussed about, that join the job which is right for your career, and what are the points that you need to take care of while you're doing that, when you plan to join, is that uh, and this is specifically a little fine-tuned for the young, those who are starting their career, that join a place to learn, okay, because skills, foundation, processes, way of thinking, these are very important. And the first thing that you should do is that try to soak in as much as possible. And for that, you need to go to an organization which has a strong design culture and leadership. I have been in organizations where I've seen that there have been young designers who have joined company and organization where in a growth stage startup or early stage, or sometimes even mature stage, where there is not enough design leadership, or the organization doesn't know what to expect from design. In that cases, you end up learning some not appropriate practices, and probably what you will learn, that may not be complete, but you take those learnings from there and you feel that this is the world of design. What is important first is to know that how design actually function in a really design matured organization, right? So look for strong design culture and leadership. The third is quality of conversation. Like I said, can't emphasize more that how so just to give an example, if you go to, if you find a founder or a product head who is saying we have to build, our design should be like Apple's, I would say that's a very bad conversation line, right? Because which is like, if somebody gives, I have been in places where business leaders would say that, can we have a design like Airbnb or something, and I think those are very wrong way of looking at design. And rather than saying that what is absolutely important and what is right for us, and then how do we go about building that. Fourth is creative confidence. This is I added here because companies like housing, if you, like many of you must have heard about housing. So whatever be the fate of housing, but housing built a very strong design culture. What I saw people coming out of housing is that they had extremely strong creative confidence, in that they believed in design, and when they were building something which was really good, they could actually negotiate hard with business and product, and had the confidence that the design is going to work. So that kind of creative confidence is absolutely important when you are getting into and having that is really good, because it helps you drive design in chaotic environments and large organizations, right? And again, the last is that design playing a value role. In fact, in many companies where I have joined, I have told them that you should not design too much at this stage, because we still have to solve product market fit. So don't invest too much on design or research. You have enough data. Let's build something which is very optimum for the users and see it is working or not. Versus there are companies where the product market fit has been there, and that the design as a value service is going to play a very important role. For example, let's say IRCTC. Like if you were to IRCTC is the only company, only place where you can book a ticket. Huh? So do they need design? I mean, obviously, if they have design and a great design platform, they will do a great service to the people. But even if they don't have, people are still have to go there, and there's no choice about that. Which is, I'm not saying that they should not design, but I'm saying that. But unlike IRCTC, if now Cleartrip wants to ask people to come to their site and book a ticket, they have to really be the design and experience has to really play out, so that and hence the role of design in Cleartrip will be much higher than probably somebody like IRCTC, right? So yeah, so this is these are some of the points which are extremely important to figure out when you are trying to take a job. And that's, I think, is the last slide. I hope I have not taken too much time here, Vikesh. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
I think that was very, very pertinent, and I'm glad you took a little extra time, because I think sometimes it's important to walk through the experience as a practitioner, as all of us have been in the industry, and share that with the next generation or the aspiring or growing leaders, design leaders. So absolutely delighting.
Thanks, Mangesh.
I was going to suggest to the management team at the institute that in interest of time, we have about 15 minutes left. Perhaps we open it up for questions. And I had a few tips that I wanted to share, but perhaps I bring those in the context of the questions being asked, right? Just a thought, Anup and the team.
Yeah, sure, Professor Shah, we can do that. We have a few questions that came in already, and I mean, unless you want to share some insights prior to taking those questions, I think we can directly go to questions if required.
I think in interest of time, we'll probably leave more room for Q&A. It's a small group, and let them kind of ask the question that's on their mind, and then maybe I and Shaya can contextually answer. And if I need to, I'll show some visuals that will help give a deeper clarity on the question itself.
Sure, Professor Shah. So I'd like to take the first question here that comes in from Chaitali. What she asks is, are programming languages like Java, Python, Scala a prerequisite for a user design course?
Shayak, you wanna?
Yeah, I can just add a couple of things. Okay, here. So, like I said, like in the current design jobs that I'm seeing around, it's not a prerequisite. But typically, when I'm meeting a very young designer who is just starting the career, probably in his 20s, I typically tell that, why don't you just learn this? Okay, this is a good time. Just go ahead. If you have slight interest, also just go and learn this, because this is going to be really, really helpful. And especially data-driven things, because many of the good jobs, if you are looking at abroad, they have having knowledge of coding, and even a little bit of machine learning, and how to kind of have evolving, like how can you use code to kind of generate designs, is something which is extremely important. And recently I was talking to one friend of mine who was a designer, was giving an interview at a very prestigious MNC. There the organization asked that, so the interviewer asked that how much how much front end development should a designer know, and his answer was something which I thought was very interesting. He said, just enough to be dangerous. Okay. So again, it's a very interesting tool in a designer's toolkit. So if you can put effort, please go and learn that, definitely.
I'll give a short answer, and I'll try to elaborate that with one of the tips that I was going to share in the context of this question. I think it goes back to what Shayak was saying about creative confidence. I think the ability for you to have a conversation, and convincing conversation, and influential conversation, especially with the engineering teams, goes up very high when you know their world, when you can communicate and having enough context, like Shayak said, just enough to be dangerous, so that they actually believe that you understand technology enough to know what is feasible, possible, and what you're asking off of them to do. If you don't have that context, you may slightly suffer from a vocabulary, right? So, having managed design teams, and as a global VP of products, having managed product managers both in US and in India, I don't think we require people to have hands-on knowledge. I don't think that's a prerequisite, but it certainly adds another 5 extra points, brownie points, if you had it, right? Now, if you also step back and kind of look at different types of design careers, all the way from the left, as you see on this slide, which is more on the problem space, right? And so there are lots of designers who are more UX designers, design strategy folks, UX researcher, user researcher, and they live in the problem space. What is the problem? Who has the problem, right? And you may have heard of these things called design thinking, empathy mapping, right? Techniques which go in the inner psyche of what problems the users are facing. And then you have a set of designers who may be on the other extreme side of the design spectrum, more on the solution side, right? And this is where you'll feel a lot of that visual design, interaction design. Now, if you are, and of course there is a spectrum, right? You know, there are people in between, you know, who can maybe do both sides. There are folks who are just specializing in information architecture, especially for large projects. IA, you know, is a very, very big function. In many companies, there are dedicated people just doing that. Now, if you happen to be on the extreme side of the visual design, where you are building high fidelity prototypes, where you're building almost near working versions of the software or the interfaces, certainly helps. Even more, it helps in that zone. But if you're on the extreme left side as part of your design career, I think the need for having technology interface kind of slows or is less urgent, I would say. So it's also depending on not just which companies and culture you join, but also, like Shaik said, what stage of your career and your focus area is, right? So hopefully that gives a little bit more context to your question. I don't know if Chetali is online, but did we answer? I guess, did I and Shaik answer adequately for you or not?
Thank you, Shayak, and also thank you, Professor Shah. Moving on to the next question. This one specifically for Shayak, and it's more career related, so I think it's probably good to have this on. So the attendee does not choose to, chooses to hide his identity. So so it says anonymous to me. Okay, so it says, "Hi Shayak. Initially, I was a web designer, but due to some situations, I joined in sales right now. I would like to start my career in AI UX, but for that, how do I go about? Because recruiters ask for experience. So, any suggestions on how he could mold his career back to the design stream?"
Okay. Slightly tough to answer this because you have to see what exactly. See, I mean, we do hire, like in organizations. I have hired fresh people who are just joining in the UI UX domain. But at the same time, I have also seen many designers who don't probably they have done a course. I've seen come across profiles like this. I think even with a course or let's say if they have done sometimes people from graphic background they have it, it depends like where you are applying for like I said, in the growth stage companies, in the organizations, if I'm hiring somebody, I will try to look at whether they have the enough product understanding and mindset or not. And in fact, that is something that needs to be built. It's just not about wireframe or putting together a screen. Whether the thinking is matured enough for dealing with the product landscape that is there in the organization. So I think sometimes if so that is something that needs to be evaluated. I can't say that what is missing with the questionnaires profile, but these are few things that needs to be explored, I think. And if like and the reason for not getting hired can be anything, but one good area is to start learning by going into a services company, because there you get volume of work and you also learn a lot, and there's a scope to learn. And at this stage, like I said, probably the salary part is not important or the position part is not important. It's important to build that frame of mind which is right for a UI UX designer. I know that people who come from web and graphic, they need to go through a lot of metamorphosis to get into this zone, and it takes time. So that's at least what I have. Pinkesh, you want to add something there?
No, I think I agree. I think the fact that this anonymous person who has asked is coming through a sales background, it's actually a positive. The ability to be customer facing, the ability to be exposed to perhaps some financial models, the act of selling, storytelling. I think these are good skills that you would anyway need as you eventually become what we call a full stack designer, right? By the way, one of the things that I was going to also talk about, and maybe this is a good way to show this for the rest of the audience as well, right? Irrespective of which side you come from, whether you come from a sales and a business side, or you come from a pure play UI and graphics design side, or you come from a pure play UX side, at the end of the day, eventually you will have to get into what we call a full stack designer capabilities and competencies. And a typical full stack designer is really a combination of four things, right? You have your UX design, as Shayak mentioned. It's really about understanding the persona and kind of building something that is intrinsically delighting, that solves a burning problem in the most efficient way. So it's not just reducing from 9 clicks to 3. It's also solving the pain point, perhaps in a very novel way. Then you have UI design, which is, of course, the sizzle is as important as the substance. And so how does it look and feel, right? The whole aspect of visual design, UI design. But then you also have product design. And I think knowing the business of how the product is structured, what's its purpose, what kind of segment it's catering to, understanding the analytics of how the consumption is happening by your interactive user, so that you can kind of create a feedback loop, understanding product analytics, so you can kind of understand which assumptions you've made in your UI are working or not. All of that is very crucial, right? And then finally, the business side of the design. Is this a free product? Is this a paid product? Is this a mass product? Is this a premium product? I think your design choices will change if you knew a little bit of the business side as well, if you had access and understanding of the different revenue models, pricing models. And I think hence, eventually, whether you come from sales or whether you come from pure play, design, full stack designer is what most companies are hiring for. Those are the ones who are growing the fastest in the industry right now, right? And so kind of keep that perspective in mind as the end goal as well, irrespective of where you start. But short answer is absolutely doable. I think, to me, the way to crack that interview would be to start building a portfolio. Start building the skills. Of course, you need to know how to do it, but knowing enough is not enough. Knowing is the start. I think you need to be able to have a demonstrable portfolio. I would say invest some time and energy in building that portfolio, so that a hiring manager is not just looking at your resume, which in my opinion and the opinions of many hiring managers, resumes are dead. I think what is more important is to kind of look at the actual work you've done, which is what we call a PDA, right? A demonstrable, a portfolio of demonstrable assets. And that PDA is going to ultimately crack that interview, impress the hiring manager, because we now know you've done something. However good or bad it may be, you've attempted it and you kind of built something, which tells us that this is a lot more hands-on.
Thank you. So Chaitali seems to have a follow-up question, and Suraj, can you please help me unmuting Chaitali so that she can ask a question, please?
Hello.
Yeah, Chaitali, hello. We can hear you. We can hear you, Chaitali. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, because my question is so large, and I was just about to type, but it was so time-consuming. So I was just typing it, and by the time you all unmuted me, thank you so much for allowing me to ask this question. Okay, my question is basically I've done a master's, okay, in engineering. Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So I've done my MTech and I want to publish a paper. My research project would be on augmented reality. Okay, because my guide suggests me to do so. And for that basis, I need to know, like, have a glimpse of user design. And that's what my faculty, my guide has told me to also have a glimpse of some like VFX or, some design modules. So because my base paper would be basically a review of a user design principle for, increasing the usability for user with, computer literacy. So I just want to know, like, what all would be covered in this UX course, like which the PL is offering, and is it relevant, or is it enough for, to have a complete enclosure of the UX understanding?
Well, my first reaction is doing the course just to go write a paper is an overkill. I think this course is probably, better ROI for somebody who wants to build a career path,
Mm-hmm.
in this, and is kind of seriously wanting to grow in this zone, right? So,
Okay.
and I know you started out with this question about the paper, but perhaps you have goals to kind of move into this role
Mm-hmm.
more
As a
judiciously, but
faculty.
yeah. So, well, before you become a faculty, I think we all have to become a student first, and we all have to first
Correct.
practice enough to be able to then tell others. At least that's
Mm-hmm.
our view.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the details are on the website. I suggest you spend some time. What you see on the screen, and let me see if I can do full screen, are the 4 core modules that the program covers, and these are modules which are kind of selected, kind of working backwards, if you will, from what we look for when we hire, right? What we look for in the industry, in terms of the core competencies
Mm-hmm.
that a designer should have. And then I think there are a bunch of electives. Again, like I said, depends on whether you want to go in the problem side, do you want to go into the solution side of the spectrum. Depends on your interest level. You can also choose a few electives, especially how do you manage design teams. It's not just, it's one thing to be a good designer as an individual contributor, and a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
prefer to be that way. At some point, you may want to set up a design team, a whole design process in the organization. And so how do you kind of set those squads up? And there's a lot of that goes in. You may want to get more into, let's say, a business design. Go kind of concentrate a little bit more and understand. Hey, there are 14 different types of revenue models, right? From freemium, which is a cloud-based new thing that wasn't there, 9 years ago.
Correct.
All of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, your customer acquisition is going to change because of that premium, the way you design your product for a free
Mm-hmm.
user versus a paid user. And so these are all electives that can kind of help you further fine tune and shape. But I would say, to
Mm-hmm.
answer your question, these are the kind of fundamental skills that one needs to have.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Industry, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Thank you, Professor Shah. So I think there seems to be a very interesting question on careers, and I think most of the questions that have come so far are more from the career standpoint. But there's a good question on the number of projects. So let me go this again. The attendee seems to be an anonymous here. So the question goes like this: does the number of projects in the portfolio matter when applying for MNCs, and how do they consider a beginner's resume?
I'll give you my 2 cents, and then maybe Shayak, you can add. I think the number, doesn't matter if it is at least 2, 3, or slightly variety, right? I mean, don't go with one project, but don't need to have 10 either, right? So as long as it's more than 2 or 3, that shows a little bit of variety. I think quality probably is more important than quantity. Now, the second part of the question is, if you're a beginner, how do you have a portfolio? I think this is a myth that a beginner is not going to be able to have a portfolio. I think Shayak already gave you an idea. Go redesign the IRCTC site, even though they're not looking for one. That's your definition of a portfolio. You're already using Zomato and Swiggy perhaps in India. Well, redesign it. If you were to order that biryani as a designer in a much better, more efficient way than what Zomato is allowing you or what Swiggy is allowing you to, go design it. That's your portfolio. So a lot of people get stuck with this thought that, look, I don't have the exposure at my work to be able to do these design projects or able to apply what I've learned. And I'm thinking that's just your internal inhibition. I think that's an internal mind block. You don't have to have a work environment in your current job, in your current life, to be able to do that. You can pick up anything that is of interest to you. The point is to prove to the recipient that you not only have knowledge about the subject, but you actually have skills. And I hope, all of you, in fact, I want to show you a quote, which is one of my favorite quotes as I've hired over the years. And I wish somebody had shared this with me sooner. And so the quote is, this Paul Hackle quote is fantastic. It kind of gives a perspective, and I'll let you read that. But basically what he's saying is that, look, everybody has an opinion. Everybody knows what he or she likes. Everybody thinks that hence they are an expert on UI, right? And I think the point here is that knowing something, and maybe your opinion is good, by the way. I'm not even suggesting that some of the folks who have opinions are bad opinions. They could be a good opinion, but knowing something is not the same as having the skill for it. In fact, if you look at the adult learning model, there are 4 layers. And I think each one of you on this call, not just who has asked the question, but I think each one of you on the call and each one of us, we continuously use this to self-evaluate where we are. I might say that I know how UI design works, but do I know it at an awareness level where I kind of know the basic vocabulary and acronyms? Do I know it at a literacy level, which means I can have conversations around it? I can probably, engage with a designer and have and speak the language a little bit? Or, which is where you go deeper, do I at least have at the skill level, which means not only do I know things, not only do I have the frameworks and theory, but here I have applied it in the context of a given problem. And I've done it multiple times to be able to have a demonstrable set of things that, look, this is how I've done it. And I've done it multiple times. And then, of course, the fourth one is an expert. People like Shayak are not only very good at what they do, but they're experts because they're setting the tone of how a design team should operate inside a company, how to hire, what processes are we going to use, and not just in your company, in the community, right? So you need to self-assess yourself as well. That when we are referring to the word skill does not mean joining a 2-day workshop somewhere and getting a 3-letter acronym, as a certification. That's great. That's good. It's a good step, but that may not be skill unless you apply. The analogy is like swimming. If you really need to learn swimming, you need the instructions, but you also need a swimming pool to practice that swimming. And actually beyond this, just a pool, the third, which is very important, you need a faculty or some kind of a coach, some kind of a mentor who's one-on-one looking at you while you're swimming in that swimming pool. Because otherwise you may be thinking that I'm swimming well, but you're actually flapping too much, too little. You may be flapping from the wrong angle of your body. Perhaps you're not taking enough breath. And so you will be inefficient, even though you manage to learn by yourself, you'll be inefficient, right? So in some sense, it's like swimming, right? Building skill requires all 3. You need the knowledge, you need the instructions, you need the best practices, but you also need a pool to practice. In this case, you need an environment to kind of apply. And third is obviously some kind of validation, feedback, and active coaching. So keep that perspective as well. Just wanted to share that, since the question came up. Shayak, anything you wanna add to it?
No, I think Pinkesh, you have covered everything. I completely agree with whatever you have put forward. In fact, I was a couple of days talking to somebody who was applying in Google, and he had almost a week's time for the Google has given him a week's time for the design assignment, and he took a month's time doing that without even like somebody who is applying in Google would get scared of the fact that, okay, if I'm not completing it in a week's time. But he was so focused on the kind of work. So, and when he submitted it, it kind of got him the job. So the idea is that quality matters, not the quantity, like you said. So yes, You need couple of portfolio projects to show variety, but apart from that, it should be the quality of work. And also that part which is today when we receive application, some of the young guys who are right within the college, they are doing so many interesting projects right within the from the college. They are solving some existing problems, or they are building new apps, or they are creating new products by themselves, designers. So yes, there is a absolutely probability of like you can go ahead and start building your portfolio regardless of whether you have in an organization or not. So completely agree to that.
A lot of questions coming in, but we are almost on the top of the hour. So maybe we might take just a handful of questions, maybe one or two. There's one that very interesting question from Sharad, especially considering the state of the work cultures these days. So his question goes like this: could you shed light on how to set up remote design teams? What to keep in mind in terms of how to make teams work at par?
Looks like it is the description of our new life today, right, Shayak? Maybe you can take this first.
Yeah. I mean, I will just talk about a bit of what we have been doing, because there is I don't have a very solid answer to this, because this is something that we are still struggling with, to be honest, and especially design, because if you don't have a whiteboard to quickly sketch out something and talk about, it becomes extremely difficult. We have been so I think a couple of things that is working for us, at least in this scenario, is that the importance of cadence has become so like meeting every 1 or 2 days to the entire and we believe in a lot of collaborative work, because in a growth stage startup like Vedantu, we want every designers to know about each other's work. It was very easy to do that in a non-remote scenario, but now just to hold those meetings and let have those catch-ups regularly so that everybody can share. We have been trying to use a lot of tools like Murals and Miro to kind of do brainstorming. They have been partially successful like that. And apart from that, it's just been more about following up on every project, and documentation has increased a lot, which is good in some way. Apart from that, we still are struggling with how to do a lot of brainstorming how to brainstorm ideas. I don't know if I have right answer for that, because you might have more exposure to that, how different organizations are doing it.
I think in the interest of time, I want to point you to this session that was done by Kelly, if I'm not getting her name wrong. But I think if the IPL team can find that video recording of the session, the whole session was about how do you manage teams remotely. And she has a largest team of designers in the world who are all remote, about 80 of them. I think she used to be at Atlassian, but I forget the name of the company that she's in now. And I think there's a whole session where she walks through 6, 7 different productivity tips in what they're actually using right now. So instead of me and Shayak kind of giving you our perspective, I think you should hear from someone who's actually doing that for a living. And even before COVID, this was just how they are set up. They find a designer in the remotest part of Europe, in the remotest part of Chennai, and just hire them, right? And now they have the system with a kind of blended agile model applied in the design ops kind of process in the world of design to bring the best productivity. And she has good recommendations on some tools as well. Short answer is this is absolutely doable. In fact, COVID or no COVID, I think we're going to see a huge transformation, as we've already seen in many companies who have made everybody kind of work from home permanently, right? I think many will follow, some all the way to the extreme of never come to the office, some to the point where you maybe show up once a week, and the rest will be in between. But the point is, I think this is an important way of life, I think, moving forward for all of them. And for design, there are some specific guidance. Take a look at the productleadershipfestival.com, which is, I remember that session because I was also one of the participants who attended it. And I think she has done a fantastic job on this topic. So find that video and kind of go through that 15, 20 minutes. It'll be worthwhile.
Thank you, Professor Shah. Thank you, guys. I think we were already beyond the hour, so I think we'll stop it at this. I'm really sorry, guys, that we couldn't take more questions, but I think, Professor Shah, if you could stop sharing your screen and give me the control, I would definitely want to share something with our audience. Thank you. Right. So we've enjoyed having you with us, Shayak and Pinkesh, and it's been a complete pleasure to host the both of you. We are grateful for your time and effort and the amount of efforts that you've taken to kind of share your thoughts with us. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the audience for joining and making this session a huge success. Guys, design career is not a subject where you would probably get all your answers within the hour. You see a QR code in front of you, and I would strongly advise that you scan this QR code and schedule a session with one of our counselors. And we would definitely want to hear more from you, address all the questions that you have, and also address those questions that we were not able to take up at this point in time. Besides, we have also have a lot of ways in which you can reach us. So, I mean, you can visit our website, productleadership.com, or send us a tweet, or even send us an email at engage@ipl.edu. Or engage@ipl.edu.in, and we'd be happy to take your questions from there. Also, folks, I would request you to take up this opportunity to not to miss this opportunity about taking up the Norman Scholarship. With that, I would like to end this session and thank you again.